Hey, it's me, Raika. Today we're going to have a look at the brand new Celestial hero, Daemia, Lady of Summer. Now, this hero wears cloth-based gear, is part of the mage class, and her primary role is to provide a significant amount of damage for your teammates, buffs for them as well. In addition, she'll significantly reduce the amount of incoming damage when she's placed in battle. So let's have a look at her skills. Her ultimate ability. Floral Shade. Now, Floral Shade is a screen-wide effect where Daemia over here will cover the entire screen with a field of flowers. So let's have a look at the skills description. Daemia creates lush shade for 10 seconds and dispels most of the negative effects suffered by all allies and enemies. During this time, they are unable to recover health, damage is increased by a total of 100%. So essentially, damage dealt to them is increased by 100%, and health cannot become less than 20% from direct damage. These effects do not work on bosses. After Last Shade ends, Daemia deals damage to all enemies. Daemia can only use her ultimate again 5 seconds after the end of Lush Shade. Level 2. When Lush Shade ends, Daemia restores the health of all allies possessing Dewy Nectar. Level 3. Any excess energy of Daemia's will increase her crit damage amplification until the next time she uses her ultimate. Now, the Dewy Nectar is this little purple orbs that will essentially swirl around your allied heroes. Now, this is an extremely important effect that she applies to your allies and will significantly buff them as well. So let's have a look at her next ability. Days of Blossom, which has a passive and an active component as well. Every 8 seconds, Daemia grants Dewy Nectar to allied heroes within her half of the battlefield for 10 seconds. This effect cannot be stacked, so essentially it's a singular effect that happens once. Active, Daemia unleashes a flurry of petals, dealing damage to all enemies. If used actively when Lush Shade is active, this skill additionally restores energy to your allies, so essentially 200 points of energy while her ultimate is active for heroes possessing Dewy Nectar. Now, she'll constantly be throwing out this Dewy Nectar to all of your allies, essentially buffing them up and reducing the amount of incoming damage. Level 2. When Torrid Wind is active. This skill, when actively used, will summon a gust of strong wind, dealing damage to all enemies 3 times. The level 3. When Blazing Sun is active, that is this ability over here. This skill, when used actively, will cast spells continuously to intensify the sunlight, damaging the health of all enemies every 1 second. The health lost increases with time until the end of the current blazing sun. When Torrent Wind and Blazing Sun are both active, a gust of strong wind will be summoned every 3 seconds and spells are being cast, dealing damage to all enemies 3 times. The level 4. At the start of battle, this is key to this specific hero, Daemia grants Dewy Nectar to all allies within her side of the battlefield. Now, essentially, this is where, this is her next ability over here, is where essentially it will become extremely beneficial. Scorching Monsoon. Daemia creates a torrent wind that lasts for 10 seconds. While torrent wind is active, each time an enemy takes damage, this will increase the damage they will suffer subsequently by a total of 3%. This effect can be stacked 8 times. So essentially, this ability can increase the damage of this specific skill by 24% until torrent wind ends and cannot be dispelled. This skill will not be used again if Torrent Wind is present on the battlefield. So the level 2 increases the amount of damage received all the way to 5%. So this can be a total of 40% increase in damage. The level 3, while Torrent Wind is active, an enemy loses 100 points of energy for every cumulative 10 times they have taken damage. So essentially, this is a wind that will essentially continually deal damage to enemies and continually drain all the precious energy that they may have. Now, the 30 engravings. When an ally possessing Dewy Nectar, that's the key little swirling purple buff around your allies, deals damage while Torrent Wind is active, Daemia summons a wind blade, dealing additional damage to a target who has been damaged by the ally possessing Dewy Nectar. So essentially this gives her more AoE damage to hit multiple enemies at the same time. So let's have a look at the next ability over here. Sweltering Heat. Daemia creates a blazing sun. So essentially this is a little effect that appears on the top left-hand corner of the screen while blazing sun is active. Each time an enemy deals damage, this will reduce their damage output by 3%. This effect can stack 8 times. Now, similar to the other effect, this damage reduction can be increased to 5%. So this is a total of 40% damage reduction that Daemia can provide for your allies. This effect cannot be dispelled. This skill will not be used again if Blazing Sun is present on the battlefield. So once again, level 2 increases the damage reduction. The level 3, for every cumulative 10 times an enemy has dealt damage during Blazing Sun, they will become stunned for 5 seconds. So this gives her additional control and makes her more effective in battle. So her 60 engravings while Blazing Sun is active. The tenacity of allies possessing Dewy Nectar is increased by 30 points. Now, this is where the Dewy Nectar buff becomes extremely powerful. Once allies have received the Dewy Nectar a cumulative of 2 times, their attack rating will be permanently increased by 15%. So this is when you simply unlock her signature item. Now, the level 10 and 20 provide a similar benefit. However, they increase in the amount of bonus attack rating that she can provide to your allies. So at level 20, when Dewy Nectar has been essentially buffed or given to your allies a total of 6 times, their attack rating will be increased by 50%. So that means the longer the battle, the more damage your allies can deal. And the final one, 30 signature item, damage dealt by enemies within Daemia's half of the battlefield to allies possessing Dewy Nectar is reduced by 50%. So as we can see, if you pair up her Blazing Sun with her signature item, this is a total of 90% damage reduction. So this is extremely powerful buff that she can provide for her allies. So let's have a look at her furniture. Her 3 out of 3 increases the duration of Torrent Wind and Blazing Sun to 15 seconds. So this essentially increases from 10 to 15. And the 9 out of 9, Torrent Wind is created at the start of battle. So this essentially allows her to immediately deal a massive amount of damage to the enemies. So let's have a look at how she does in battle. So let's begin with this training dummy over here. So as we can see, as soon as she starts into battle, she provides these little purple buffs around your allies. This essentially increases their damage, their attack rating specifically. In addition, if the allies are in Daemia's half, so as we can see both allies are in Daemia's half, they will receive a massive amount of damage reduction. So this is pretty significant, and she'll continually keep buffing her allies. So there we go. These are the Torrid Winds, and that is a strong gust of wind. So as we can see from the top left-hand corner, this is the Blazing Sun effect. There we go. And it lasts for a couple of seconds. Now she'll alternate between her Torrent Wind and her Blazing Sun effect. And as we can see, she can even stack both effects at the same time, where she can deal massive amounts of damage to the enemies. So let's get a couple of enemies on the battlefield and use her ultimate skill. There we go. There's the Field of Flowers that I've mentioned, and she can also use both Torrent Wind and Blazing Sun effects as well. This will supercharge her damage and her buffs for her allies. So let's have a look at how she does at a much higher level deficit. Now, as we can see over here, she'll do extremely well essentially to counter burst-based teams, as when she essentially is on battle, she'll significantly reduce the amount of incoming damage dealt to your allied heroes. So either the longer the battle is, or essentially if you can keep the enemies within a certain position, so you can have all of your allies in your half of the battlefield, this will provide them with a massive amount of damage reduction and buffs from Daemia. So as we can see, these are various teams that she does extremely well in. So let's have a look at how she does in this specific battle. So as soon as the battle starts, she immediately buffs her allies and significantly reduces the amount of incoming damage. If my allies did not have that damage reduction, in some cases, Scarlet and Daemia would be one shot by the enemies. However, because of the damage reduction, this essentially allowed my allies to survive longer and deal more damage to the enemies. So as we can see over here, she's constantly dealing damage to the enemies through her various effects, both Torrid Winds and Blazing Sun. And as we can see over here, the Field of Flowers as well. So as we can see, she did a significant amount of damage. So what is the minimum investment that I would recommend into this specific hero? I would highly recommend getting her all the way to 30 out of 30 signature item, as this provides your teammates with the massive amount of damage increase, which is permanent for the entire duration of battle. In addition, this damage reduction is also permanent, as it is essentially, as long as your allies are buffed by this Dewy Nectar, they will constantly receive the 50% damage reduction. In addition, she also provides a bit of control, and she also increases the amount of damage that the enemies take. So essentially, she is all-rounder in all of her abilities and skills. So let's have a look at her furniture. I would also recommend getting her 9 out of 9 furniture. The reason for this is for the Torrid Wind. This essentially allows her to deal massive amount of damage, essentially giving your team a bit more burst potential in one-shotting a couple of those weaker enemy units. Now, I would also recommend getting her 30 Engravings as well, as this allows her to deal more damage with her Torrid Wind ability. And I would also recommend getting her 60 out of 60 Engravings as well, as this essentially gives your allies an additional tenacity buff. In addition, this allows her to be more tanky and deal more damage to the enemies due to her essentially effect of the longer the battle lasts, the more buffs that your allies will gain and the stronger your teammates will be.